Welcome to the Empowered Mind podcast with Joelle and Natalie Rivera. We are on a never-ending quest to master the power of our mind, develop a growth mindset, and explore the leading edge of positive psychology and human potential so we can take radical personal responsibility for creating our destinies and reaching our potential.
So let me ask you, are you wasting too much time trying to change or trying to understand other people? See, and that's one of the flaws a lot of us do, is that we think that maybe we could just understand them, take a little bit more time and really understand where they're coming from. I'm not telling you not to do that, but it doesn't always work that way. And also sometimes we think maybe I can just change them. Maybe I can make them behave this way or think this way. Maybe I could change their perspective in life. And sometimes we can, but for the most part, it doesn't work that way. We have to recognize that everyone's at a different place. Everyone sees life through a different lens. We all have our different upbringings, and what we see that this is what reality is sometimes, and this is how people should behave. Well, we all have different shoulds. We all have different perspectives. And it's important to recognize that sometimes those perspectives are so ingrained within other people that it's hard for us to really understand them because we're ingrained in our own perspectives.
And so, like Joelle said, it's not that we're trying to tell you to stop trying to put yourself in other people's shoes or to stop being empathetic. But the truth is, a lot of times, empathy is not even really empathy because you might not actually understand what they're feeling. You just think you do. And then there's also, it's great. You want to try to know where someone else is coming from. You want to make an accommodation for the fact that they have a different perspective. And that's all well and good. But when this becomes a problem is when you have somebody in your life that you have to deal with on a regular basis and you just don't see eye to eye, no matter how hard you try. It could even be, it doesn't have to be someone it could just be like some, neutral other that thinks differently than you. And you try so hard to understand how people who think this way think so that you can make sense of it, and you just can't. And so it's really about finding that line where your own desire to try to understand is actually starting to hurt you because you're driving yourself crazy. Because the truth is that you cannot rationalize with an irrational person. And sometimes your experience of life is so divergent from another person that no matter how you describe it to each other, you're both just talking to a brick wall. It's not that you're wrong or that they're wrong. You're both right. Imagine you were standing in a room with someone back to back, and somebody asked you to tell them what is it that is in that room. So you might be facing one way and you might say, well, there's a television and there's a couch. But the other person who's facing the opposite way says there's a refrigerator. And you're thinking, what are you, crazy? I don't see a refrigerator. But the truth is you're both right because you're seeing it from a different perspective. So all we're trying to say here is that, yes, sometimes you want to understand other people's viewpoint, but sometimes you're not going to get it. And that's okay.
And it's recognizing that we all have our own biases. We cannot ever really step away fully sometimes from our own thinking, our biases, and our belief systems. And it's also recognizing that what works for us may not work for other people. So what you say, well, this is the way that you should do something because it works for you emotionally, physically, or in your life, doesn't necessarily mean it's in alignment with another person's belief about life. It's just like if somebody really wants to have an argument all the time with their significant other, with you, and just create drama in their life, and you're trying to convince them that there's a different way to live, sometimes they have it so ingrained within them that this is what reality is, this is how life should be lived, and that they're not going to see outside of that because they're created a reality that's so different outside of yours. And it's important to look at it from the perspective of that we live sometimes in different worlds. And I know some of you are saying, well, some things are just facts. And I agree, some things are just facts. There is no alternative facts. It's either fact or not. But it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to get to someone from a factual perspective. Because a lot of times our perspective in life and what we view as being right and wrong comes at an emotional level. People are tied to those emotions. So it's recognizing that we create this world, but you don't have to live in another person's world. You don't have to live in another person's reality. And sometimes when we spend all this time and energy trying to change someone, trying to prove that we're right, or trying to change their perspective about something, all we're doing is that we're embracing their world. We're getting sucked into somebody else's belief system. We're getting sucked into maybe their drama or maybe the way they view life that's unhealthy. And all we're doing is kind of punishing ourselves without recognizing that maybe I just need to step back. Maybe I just need to honor where they're at. Maybe I just need to agree to disagree. Maybe I can just listen to them out without trying to change their perspective. Or maybe I just need to embrace that they see life different than I do. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, they live their life. They create their lives. I don't have to live it. They have to live it. So what life are you creating when you try to always live in someone else's world?
And I know, there's probably people who are listening to this and saying, you know what, that makes sense. But what do you do when you literally live in the same world as someone, in the same house as someone, or someone in your family, or someone that you see on a daily basis, or your boss, or someone at work? What if you have to live in their world physically? Then what do you do? And so the biggest point to take away from this is that you might not be able to understand them, and that's okay. It's not your job to change their mind, and doesn't make sense for you to keep working at trying to get them to change. People are where they are, and especially if you've already tried, you've probably exhausted yourself, and you should start to be able to see it's not going to work. So what do you do in that situation? Well, that's where you take personal responsibility. You recognize that this is the way that the person is. And to whatever degree I understand it, this is the way they see the world. And then it's up to you to make your decision of how you interact with them based on your acceptance of the fact that you do not understand them and you cannot change them. And so you can change the way that you talk to them. You can change the way that you behave around them. You can make decisions to engage with them differently, to have them in your life less or not at all. That is your choice. But you don't want to keep torturing yourself trying to think and convince yourself that this person's going to be different, because they're not, and that's just the way that they are, and it's okay. So the reason why we're so passionate about this is we know so many people that just get stuck waiting for someone else to change, or becoming obsessed with wanting people to be different than they are. And all it does is it makes your world darker. It takes away your light.
And it's really remembering that we have a choice. We might not be able to change how someone else thinks or behaves, but we have a choice to whether we accept that behavior in our lives, or whether the way that we react to it, or the way that we think about it, or how much space we let them accumulate in our own head, and that we always have a choice of setting boundaries. And at the end of the day is really asking yourself, am I willing to keep giving my limited time in this life up to trying to change or understand other people that maybe I'm just not going to be able to understand, or it's not really my role to sometimes change someone that's not ready to create change in their life?
And it's also a matter of taking responsibility for your own emotional state. Because the truth is, when you're dealing with a person or with an ideology that you disagree with and you can't understand it, you can't wrap your brain around it, you can't seem to get through, they're not willing to change, they're not getting it, it makes you upset. It makes you sad. It makes you angry. But it's not really that it's making you that way. It's that you're making you that way by continuing to beat yourself up and beat them up and talk about it and focus on it and obsess over it and think about it and try to change them and try to discuss it. You don't have to give away your power. The truth is that the other person, the other people, they do not have the power to control your emotional state. You do. And so at some point, you're going to reach a choice point where you get to decide, are you going to continue to feel bad and waste your time? Or are you just going to accept that some people aren't going to get it, and sometimes you don't have to understand? Thank you, fellow Freedom Junkies, for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And if you want to help us grow, please rate and share this podcast. You can also become a member of Freedom Nation. Visit freedomorbustpodcast.com and sign up to receive access to exclusive content and take the 21-day happiness challenge. As you know, we believe that entrepreneurship is the ultimate form of empowerment, which is why we created the Side Hustle Business Startup course for anyone looking to create their own income and take back their power. We offer an exclusive discount for our podcast listeners. Find out more at freedomorbustpodcast.com.